Thanks for tuning in. This is Thomper B. Thompin, and if you're new to the channel, it's all about ATVs, dirt bike riding, trucks, and camping. And in this video, I want to talk about kind of my journey from going from the half-ton trucks to an HD truck to help explain some of the numbers like payload, tongue weight, and all those types of things to maybe help you make a decision if you are one of those people that are on the fence between something like an F-150 or an F-250 or a Silverado 1500 or 2500. So again, I'm going to speak to very specific numbers and things that maybe some folks don't think about, but also I'm going to speak to the actual driving experience towing a trailer between these two types of trucks. So quick backstory, we are pulling a 25-foot tandem axle toy hauler by Forest River, and generally we've got the thing loaded to just about 7,000 pounds on our camping trips or riding trips, whatever we're doing. And I've measured the tongue weight in various configurations, and it's between 750 and 1,000 pounds. So using this tongue weight scale, we are typically at the upper end of that, so closer to 1,000 pounds of tongue weight. So I started towing this trailer with a 2023 Toyota Tundra with the twin turbocharged V6 3.4, and then I moved on to the 2024 GMC 1500 Sierra with the 3-liter Duramax, the inline 6 single turbo, and the max trailering package on that truck. So obviously now I am in a GMC Sierra 2500 with the 6.6 gasser. So our primary reason for moving up to the 3/4 ton truck was payload. 1,000 pounds of tongue weight, plus a bed full of additional toys. My son is 2.5. He's got electric ATVs and dirt bikes, and as he gets older, we're only going to get bigger and heavier toys for him too. Plus, we'll typically take about 30 gallons of extra fresh water with us in the bed of the truck. That's another 250 pounds, plus all the extra camping gear. So typically on our camping trips, our small toy hauler, which based on the parking space that we have available for it, is the longest one we can get right now. It's usually packed to the gills. So I have to take advantage of the truck bed to take a lot of additional gear and weight. So all these payload issues, plus a cab full of people and more camping gear, just kind of made it to the point where we were exceeding payload on the half-ton truck. So I do want to comment that both of those half-ton trucks, the Tundra and the Sierra 1500, they both pulled this 7,000 pound trailer really well from the perspective of the engine power. Both were turbocharged, so they made a ton of torque, more torque than this 6.6 V8 makes. Both of them made more torque than that. Both of them made a little bit less horsepower though, but they both pulled it just fine. But they did have pretty limited tongue weight and payload capacities on both of those trucks. So if you're not towing a toy hauler, and perhaps you're towing a tandem axle regular camper, those generally have less tongue weight than a toy hauler tends to have. So maybe you can get away with the half-ton truck. Everybody's situation is different. I'm just providing some information out there. I'm relaying my scenario in case others are in a similar situation. So as stated, capacity and payload are usually the big issue. The 2023 Tundra had a tow weight, a max tow rating of about 11,000 pounds, and a max payload of about 1,430, and a max tongue weight of about 1,100 pounds. And then the GMC Sierra 1500 had a little bit more of a boost. That one did have the max trailering package that GM offers. So it had a max tow rating of 12,900 pounds, a max tongue weight, 10%. On the sticker, it said 1,290 pounds, and that vehicle had a max payload of about 1,640 pounds. So those both kind of pale in comparison to any of the HD market. So this GMC Sierra 2500, for example, has a max payload of 3,315 pounds, give or take, and it can do a maximum conventional bumper pull of 16,000 pounds, a maximum tongue weight of 1,600 pounds. When you get into the goosenecks and the fifth wheels for these, those numbers are a little bit higher for max tow rating and payload. So not to mention, in addition to those increases, the rear axle rating on these heavy duty trucks is usually always much higher than the half-ton trucks, as an example. And those two half-tons that I had, the Tundra and the Sierra 1500, had very respectable tow ratings for the half-ton market. Now the payload on the Tundra at just under 1500 was maybe about average. It did have a lot of gizmos and gadgets on it too that, you know, take away from that payload. I also must mention that all these trucks I've owned have been crew cab and short bed. So on the half tons, that's a what, 5'10" bed, 5'8", somewhere around there. And on the heavy duty trucks, at least for GM, it's 6'10". So it just kind of expands a lot of opportunities there. But yes, the tow rating for both those half tons was pretty dang good, but the payloads were, the Sierra 1500 at about 1650, that's actually pretty darn good. But in the half-ton market, you're really not going to see payloads of above 1,800 pounds, especially in the crew cab variant of these trucks, which is the most common form. Taking my family camping with me, of course, so I need a crew cab. So by moving to the HD, this 3/4 ton truck, I'm hoping with that payload of up and over 3,300 pounds, I'm never going to run into any issues. I can drop that 1,000 pounds of tongue weight on the ball. I can put an additional ATV in the bed of the truck and some water and things, and then I can also stow my family and a bunch of other gear inside the cab and just never run into any issues with payload again. Now, if you do opt for the diesel engine in any of these trucks, you may want to look at like the 1 ton or the 3,500 market, just because those are going to have additional payload. The diesel engines from all the offerings are typically much heavier than their gasoline offerings, despite this having an iron block as well. So just something to consider if you are moving up for that additional payload. Really pay attention to whatever truck you're looking at and how the options and things mess with that payload. So some of the benefits of moving up to an HD truck go way beyond like what you can read on a spec sheet. A lot of those are super obvious, but there are some related to the actual driving dynamics that make for towing so much better, and it's really hard to describe. It's kind of something you just have to experience. That being said, I mean, it is pretty logical when you think about it. So in the case of my upgrade to this 2500 from the GMC 1500, it weighs an additional 2,000 pounds over that 1500. So I'm sitting at approximately 7,500 pounds for the tow vehicle itself. This is a 6'10" bed, as I mentioned, which automatically gives this truck a longer wheelbase than that 1500 I had. So that longer wheelbase, coupled with the extra heft, just make for a more sure-footed towing experience. So there's a little bit less drama. There's less undulation on bumpy roads. There's less porpoising over like bridge expansion joints and things like that. And so like rough roads will kind of upset the truck a little bit less. So passing semi trucks and major gusts of wind should have less of an effect on this heavier, longer wheel-based tow rig. So of course you can get tow mirrors on many different half tons out there in the market, but I didn't have that option on either of my two trucks. And I must say, these tow mirrors make a huge difference when pulling with that trailer, especially on the interstate. With the standard mirrors from the GM and the Toyota that I had, the GMC, they were both pretty identical as far as how far down the trailer sides I could see while towing on the interstate, and it wasn't that much. It wasn't enough for me to be truly comfortable. It was enough for it to be like not dangerous, but having tow mirrors is awesome. It's a major difference in like confidence and safety when towing on the interstate. So again, this video is not trying to tell people what to do, get a half ton or a 3/4 ton. I'm just trying to provide information and examples in case other people are in the same boat. I think half ton trucks are fantastic, and quite frankly, they're just a lot easier to live with if you can. They have a shorter length, a shorter height. They're generally more comfortable to ride around in. They're easier to park, all those things. So having a half ton truck, if you can, is a great option. So I do want to bring up maintenance, because that is one of the things that a lot of people are going to have to consider, especially because there's just so many different engine options between half ton trucks and all the way up to the HD trucks. Like you've got 4-cylinder turbos all the way up to turbocharged diesel V8s and everything in between. And like the V8s in the half-ton market aren't necessarily the same as the V8s in the HD market as well. So maintenance is kind of a tough thing to really talk about. Are we talking turbocharged? Are we talking naturally aspirated? Are we talking gasoline or diesel? I had a turbocharged gasoline Tundra. I had a turbocharged diesel Sierra, and both of them came with their own unique maintenance items. Obviously with the diesels, whether they're half-ton or heavy duty, you're going to be adding depth, you're going to be doing fuel filter changes, no spark plugs to worry about. But I think the maintenance on the V8 heavy duties versus the turbocharged gas and V8 gas half tons is kind of a unique topic, because the half tons should be cheaper to maintain. They typically are going to hold less oil, so oil changes are going to be a little bit cheaper, although this gasser is only 8 quarts. Some of those half-ton trucks have 6-7 quarts of oil that you're changing out. Spark plugs in turbocharged engines can generally be a more frequent change. These, for example, are every 100,000 miles. That Tundra I had called for every 40,000 miles, changing out the spark plugs. So I just want to bring this up because I think it's a point that is hard to really capture in numbers and data, and something that should probably be discussed though, and that is like longevity and durability. HD trucks are just built stronger. They're built for higher load capacities, more stress on their engines and transmissions, and their final drive gearing and all that. So they're just heavier duty all the way around. So if you're going to be towing a 7,000 pound travel trailer with a lot of tongue weight perhaps, an HD truck is just going to do it with a lot less stress than a 1500 truck will. The engines are also built very differently. Like, I'm totally stealing this from Getty's Garage, that wonderful YouTube channel by this Canadian cat up there. He does all sorts of videos on all these trucks. He's an actual diesel mechanic, and he breaks this down 1,000 times better than I could. But he talks about a lot of the internals in these engines. One prime example is going to be the piston ring thickness. The half-ton trucks are generally using low friction, thinner piston rings, whereas the HD trucks are using much heavier duty, thicker piston rings. Everything's just built more robustly, and so it should have greater longevity and durability. Quick comment on the actual cab of the vehicle. I think most people know this, but some people might not. They're essentially identical between the half tons and the HD trucks. The interiors are all the same. The rear legroom is all the same. And the actual layouts are pretty much all the same. And I think that's basically across the board between Ford, GM, and Ram. There may be some differences out there that I'm not aware of. If so, just let me know in the comments. So I also want to bring up pricing, because that's another consideration that folks are going to have to think about, especially if they're looking at buying a brand new truck. The half-ton market has gotten insanely expensive. I mean, as has the HD market, but I went on a GMC's website, for example, and I built out identical down to every single trim and option that I could find, identical 1500 and 2500 gasoline V8 trucks. So same cab, bed configuration, the HDs are longer beds, gasoline V8, AT4 trim, and the same option package, and they were within about $3,000 of each other. So maybe that's applicable across the board. HD trucks are maybe $2,000 to $4,000 more expensive than their 1500 little brothers. Now when you opt for the diesel engine, that all goes away. GM, for example, the diesel is a $10,000 option. I think for Ram and Ford, it's about $12,000 to option up to the diesel from their gasoline offerings. Something to consider. Fuel economy, another really difficult thing to put your finger on, because there's so many different engine options in the half-ton and the HD market, not to mention Not everybody's pulling the same thing in the same area, at the same elevation, at the same speeds. So a lot of considerations to be made there. But in my experience with these 3 different trucks that I've had, when it comes to towing, you just can't beat the diesel. Obviously, that's going to get the best fuel economy unladen and with pulling a trailer, especially a big brick through the wind. But I will say, when it comes to looking at the 2023 Tundra that I had, cruising around unladen, it was easy for me to get 20 miles per gallon, especially on like highway stints. This thing, you're getting maybe like 17 on the highway. Now, where they get a little bit closer is when towing my toy hauler. That Tundra would get approximately 8 to, on its best day, 11 mpg pulling that toy hauler. This truck, I'm getting right about that 8 to 10 mark. So it's not really a significant savings in gasoline usage with the half ton. But again, it just varies wildly depending on what engine you've got, what you're towing, where you're towing it. So in conclusion, again, I'm not trying to push anybody any direction. I'm just trying to share my experience. If you happen to be on the fence between a half ton and an HD truck, maybe you're anticipating some growth in the future with your family, with your toys, whatever you're pulling or hauling, just go HD. I wish I did. So, I mean, kind of an expensive mistake I made, but it was a learning experience for me. So, if you got any questions, please, I'll try my best to answer them. But yeah, thanks for watching.